Alright, so now that we've finished with the front and got the wheels back on, we're moving to the rear. We've already got the wheel off in the rear, and the rear looks pretty simple. All you got to do is there's one long, I can't get to it, but there's one, that bolt right there. There's one long bolt down there. It's one bolt in the bottom. So you're going to need to remove that. And then you have to remove some of your trunk lining. Alright, so to access the top of the rear coilovers, you're going to need to remove your trunk lining and this black piece. Get in here. This black piece, there's actually just four clips that you need to remove, and this will just pull out. I'll pull that out. That piece will just pull out, and then you can get better access to the top of your rear coilovers. And the bolts for your rear coilovers are just going to be in here. There's one, and there's one on the back side there, and then that's the same for each side. So I guess two nuts that you have to take off for the rear coilovers. Alright, so we're going to start with removing that long bolt in the bottom of the rear coilover. For that, you need a 17mm socket and a universal joint, because it's kind of hard to get to. Once again, I'm using the impact wrench, but you could also use a regular ratchet, which is a little bit harder. And you also need a 17mm regular wrench for the backup wrench. And then this bolt also runs through a sway bar. You don't have to take the bolt all the way out through the sway bar. You can just back it out enough to get your coilover off. Alrighty, that's pretty tight on there, so I'm going to try and break it loose with a small breaker bar. Alright, that should be good. I just broke it loose with the breaker bar, and then we're going to take the impact back in there and loosen it out all the way. Alrighty, so now that we've removed the nut on that bolt, we can back the bolt out a little bit.
Alright, as you can see here, we had to lift up the jack to support the rotor and hub.
So now that bolt should slide out freely.
Right here we're using an alignment tool on the other side of the bolt to push it all the way through. As you can see, we have now gotten it out, and it should just pull out.
Alright, now that we've got that bolt pushed out, not all the way, but just enough through the coilover, it's still holding in the sway bar, we were able to push the old coilover out of its fitting. So now what we'll do is loosen those top bolts, and the coilover should just slide right out. Alright, so now all he's doing is just loosening those top bolts. There's two top bolts. They are a 14mm socket, and I'm going to go down below here and catch the coilover. Because once he loosens those two bolts, the coilover is just going to fall right out. Like I said earlier, that back bolt is kind of hard to get to up top there. Alrighty. So you got both the nuts off up there. Just lower the coilover. Pull it out. We have removed the old rear coilover. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're just going to get the new coilover in place. We're going to feed it up through the strut hole or whatever you want to call it. And we're going to tighten the nuts on the top there.
We're guiding that long remote extender
Go down a little bit
through the hole. You see we did the same thing this one right here. And this is the remote extender for the coilover dampening.
Okay, you can let go.
Now just put the bolts back on. And it is good. Now we just tighten them down, and that is it for the top.
Work it in there and that's
So this is what the remote extender should look like when it comes out through the hole. As you can see, put it through that hole right there. It just comes out like that. So what we just did is we just used the alignment tool to line up the hole on the back of, or on the bottom of the coilover, knocking the bolt back into place.
Now that the bolt's lined up in there, all we got to do is put that nut back on and tighten it up.
You just put the nut on the other side of that bolt and tighten it up, and that is it.
So we're using the impact wrench again, and then just a regular wrench on the other side. Alright, so now that we've gotten that new coilover lined up and we got that bolt tightened down there, all that's left to do is make sure the top is tightened. So now all we have left is just adjust the coilovers a little bit and then put my trunk back together, since we had to remove all that stuff to access the top of the coilovers. And then just put the wheels back on, and I'll show you the car when we're done. Alrighty, now that we have got all 4 coilovers on, we put our wheels back on, got it back on the ground, put the trunk back together, we're good to go. There are some farther adjustments that need to be made. I guess personal preferences with the height, and you can do harder or softer how it rides. We can do all that later. Now I'll give you guys a look around the car.